Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, and I'm gonna be bringing you guys what if Deku had Kozmo and Wanda? How will this play out? Watch to find out. Okay, guys, before the video gets started, I just want to say this is going to be the only part of this what if, the only part that's going to be out of my channel since this Deku is going to be a little overpowered. So I just really want to, throw that out there. Only what if about this. But yeah, with that being said, I'm gonna definitely need about 30 likes on this video at least, or it'll be a disappointment. Just kidding. But yeah, definitely like the video up, subscribe, and leave a comment down below on what you think of the video. But with that being said, let's get started. So, all of the original events in the My Hero Academia timeline will go to canon up until Deku gets told that he's quirkless. Once he gets told that he's quirkless for the next 2 months or so, Deku will actually be miserable. He'll be very unhappy. All of the kids will actually end up picking on him and bullying on him. Now, this one, Deku would actually be in his room one day crying, thinking about how bad his luck is, Why did he have to be born quirkless, Why is it always him? Like, why is he always the victim of everything bad? Why does he have to get picked on? Why is it always him? Like, why has it always been him? And this is when, out of nowhere, little smoke would appear, and 2 fairies would appear out of nowhere. This is when Deku would be like, who are you guys? And Kozmo and Wanda would be like, where are your fairy? Where are your godparents? And Deku would say, godparents? What's that? This is when Kozmo would basically go to say, well, Izuku, we basically are your fairy godparents. We can grant you any wishes you want. And the reason we're here is because you're miserable and unhappy. This one, Wanda will smack Kozmo and be like, that's not why. She would basically begin to say, well, Deku, as much as I want to sugarcoat it, that is basically why we're here. We noticed that you were very miserable and unhappy. And, that's the purpose of godparents. Every kid can actually have one, but you just managed to get very lucky and get us. And this is when Deku would be like, so you guys can grant me wishes? And they would look at each other and be like, yeah, well, that's basically what we can do. This is when Deku would say, I wish I had a quirk. And they would grant it to him. Now, this quirk would not be very good. Deku would turn into sludge, and Deku would be like, what the? I don't want this. This when Kozmo would say, yeah, well, this is a quirk that I've been wanting to see for a while now, so I hope you like it. This when Deku would say, I wish I didn't have a quirk. He would go back to normal. This when Kozmo would be like, oh man, I really like that quirk. This when Deku would say, I wish I had All Might's quirk. And Kozmo and Wanda would wave their wands, and it would be granted. Now, Deku would basically go in to try to throw a punch, but Wanda would basically grab his hand and be like, hey, Izuku, can you try that outside? Not inside. If you try to throw a punch, you would destroy the entire building. And Deku would look at her and be like, I'm really that strong? And Wanda would say, yeah, I mean, you have the power of All Might now. So when Deku would be like, awesome! He would go to the top of the building that he lives on, and he would throw a full power punch at the sky. It would immediately clear up, and all of the clouds would have been blown away. The sky would have been perfect pitch blue, and this one Deku would say, whoa. And out of nowhere, he would feel that he would lose all feeling in his arm. It would have shattered completely, and it would all hit him at once. Izuku would be like, oh, my arm! And it would have basically blown off instantly. This one Kozmo and Wanda would say, well, yeah, that's what happens when you have all that power. This is when Deku would say, I wish my arm was healed. Kozmo and Wanda would grant it, and then he would say, I wish that my quirk didn't hurt me. They would grant that to him, and Deku would try to throw another punch exactly like before. This one Deku would realize that he has the exact power of All Might. And what's better, he can't hurt himself. This is when Deku would basically be so happy and be like, wow, I can't believe it. I can become a hero now. And Kozmo and Wanda would look at each other, kind of smiling, feeling accomplished for themselves for what they did to Deku and granting one of his wishes. This is when Deku would say, thank you. And Deku and Kozmo and Wanda would proceed to be like, don't mention it, Timmy. Don't mention it, Timmy. Don't mention it, Izuku. We're always here to help. This is when Deku would basically look at them and say, wow, you guys are great. And would begin to say, I wish I had perfect control of this quirk. This is when Kozmo and Wanda would be like, oh, okay, done. They'd proceed to grant that wish for Deku, and Deku would basically begin to get, a full understanding of how One For All works. He would begin to realize that One For All can be passed down. And this is when Deku would say, wait, this quirk isn't his? And Cosmo and Wanda would begin to look at each other and say, well, no, Timmy. Well, no, Deku. This quirk is actually not originally All Might's. It's actually a quirk that was handed down to him by his predecessors. They'd begin to explain One For All to him, and Deku would be like, wow, I never knew that. I always thought that All Might was just naturally born. I thought that he was just born on Earth and was just doing everything he could because of his own power. This is when Deku would basically be like, that's crazy. And Deku would proceed to look at them and say, well, thank you for the quirk. I really appreciate it. And Cosmo and Wanda would basically be like, sure thing, Deku. Now, for the rest of Deku's life, he would go back to school and he would show off that he has the immense power that All Might has. This is when Bakugo would begin to get extremely jealous of him and be like, I should have that quirk. He's like, why does Izuku get to have it? He was nothing but a quirkless bastard before. And he would begin to try to find out how Deku got his quirk. Now, as for Cosmo and Wanda, Deku would proceed to have them as fishes in his room, and since Bakugo can't exactly enter his room, he will never actually end up finding out the secret to Deku's quirk. I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of a time skip to middle school. Now, this is when the teacher will actually walk into the classroom and begin to say, hey kids, you guys need to start thinking about the future. This is when he would begin to throw the papers up in the air and say, just kidding, I know you guys all want to become heroes. And he would proceed to throw the papers in the air. This is when all the kids would basically start flashing off their quirks and be like, yeah, we all want to become heroes. Bakugo would begin to get up and say, don't lump me in with the rest of these rejects, teach. I'm the real deal. And everybody else would say, you're not the real deal, Izuku is. He's gonna be the next All Might. And Bakugo would have nothing to say. He would just be angry and look at Izuku, as Izuku just simply smiles and feels very happy that he has all of this to himself. Cosmo and Wanda would just be back at home and be like, yeah, well, Timmy, Deku, yeah, well, Deku definitely does have that. They'd be watching over him. And Deku would proceed to just, have the day go on. At the end of class, Bakugo and his goons would walk up to Deku when he was writing down in his notebook. And they would go up to Deku and say, hey, Deku, don't you dare try to get into UA. I'm the only one getting into that school. This is when Deku would say, come on, Kachan, we can both get in there, can't we? And Bakugo would shoot an explosion at Deku and say, drop out or else. This is when Deku would look at Bakugo and say, I don't have to do what you say, Kachan. If you want to take this outside, we can. This is when Bakugo would say, or we can just do this now. He would begin to rush at Deku, and Deku would sidestep him and punch him into the gut, knocking him out on impact. And his goons would just kind of stand back and be like, Izuku, we don't want any trouble. We were just following Bakugo. And Izuku would be like, yeah, we'll take him to the nurse. I'm leaving. He would begin to walk out and begin to just basically take the quick route home. He would take a path that he's never taken before, and when he's on his way, he would kind of just feel that something's off. This went out of nowhere. The sewer lid would open and a huge green sludge would appear out of nowhere. It would say, give me your body, kid. And Deku would be like, whoa, what the hell? I'm not giving you my body. And the sludge villain would try to go after Deku, but Deku would be like, hell no. He would then throw a smash at it, blowing it away. And this one All Might would try to pop up, but right as he does, the sludge would hit his face. And he'd be like, I am... And Deku would be like, oh my god, All Might. And All Might would be like, I am... blow the sludge off of his face. This one he would say, hey kid, did you do this? And Deku would say, yeah. And All Might would look at him and say, thank you, kid. You've been a great help. This is when All Might and Deku would actually proceed to bottle up the sludge villain. And Deku would look at All Might and say, hey, All Might, I've been meaning to ask you something for quite a long time. This one, All Might would look at him and say, I'm sorry, kid, I gotta go, after signing his notebook and jump off. This one, Deku would jump off with him and say, I gotta know, All Might. And All Might would look at his side and see, he'd be like, what the fuck? This kid is my quirk? This is when Deku and All Might would land on the building, and Deku would say, I've been wanting to ask you about One For All. And All Might would be like, he would be dumbfounded, just like, how do you know about One For All, kid? This is when Deku would be like, Kozmo, Wanda. And they would both appear. This is when Deku would basically say, well, I didn't know about it. They told me about it. And All Might would not see anything there. This is when All Might would be like, what do you mean? Deku would say, well, I guess you could say my quirk gives me the ability to wish for anything that I want. And I wish for your power, All Might. That's how I have the immense strength that you do. All Might, after hearing this, would say, wow, you have one for all. He would begin to tell Deku about the fact that he was looking for a successor. And Deku would be like, are you serious, All Might? This is when All Might would proceed to look at Deku and say, yeah, kid, I mean, I was looking for a successor for quite some time. I was actually planning to get work in UA. And Izuku would be like, I'm going to UA too. Like, I'm going to be doing the entrance exam. So when All Might would look at Izuku and smile and say, well, I hope you pass, kid. Before All Might leaves, Deku would say, wait, could you train me? And All Might would look at him and say, of course I can train you, kid. This is when the 10-month period would start, and All Might and Deku would proceed to train. All Might would clear the beach in about a week, and All Might would be extremely shocked. He'd be like, wow, this kid has the exact strength that I had, and this kid can use my quirk perfectly. This is when All Might would ask him how he's able to use One for All so perfectly throughout his body. And Deku would proceed to be like, I don't know. During the 8-month arc, this is when Deku, spoiler, if you guys don't want any manga spoilers, then I suggest you stop watching now. Deku would actually proceed to get Black Whip. Now Black Whip would start going crazy, and Deku would be like, what is this? This is when he would ask for Kozmo and Wanda. He'd be like, Kozmo, Wanda, stop this! And they would stop the quirk from rampaging. This is when Deku would look at All Might and say, All Might, what's going on? This is when All Might would look at Deku and say, it seems that it's one of the previous quirks from One for All. And Deku would be wondering to himself, like, why this is happening to him. Kozmo and Wanda would go on to explain what All Might had done in canon, but in much more vivid detail. They would tell him that sooner or later, Deku's actually going to be developing all of the quirks in One for All, and Deku would be extremely happy. He'd be like, I'm going to get more quirks? This is when Kozmo and Wanda would be like, you sure will, Izuku. And All Might will basically just be dumbfounded by this knowledge, because Deku would actually tell him. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to be like, wow, I can't believe it. And Kozmo and Wanda would be like, yeah, I mean, you're going to be one of the greatest heroes of all time, if not the greatest. And Kozmo would be like, yeah, he's going to be just like me. I'm going to just go ahead and skip over to the 10-month arc. By this time, Deku would have wished to have all of the previous quirks from One for All, and Deku would have actually wished to master them all. So at this point, Deku is a beast. Now, from what we know from the manga up to this current point, Deku at this point would actually have the quirk Float from Nana Shimura. He would have a danger detection quirk from, I think it was the 4th user. He would have Black Whip from, I'm not really too sure who. And let's just say he gets whatever quirks you guys want. He would get let's just give him whatever I want. He would proceed to get a lightning quirk, a fire quirk, an ice quirk, and let's say he gets an intelligence quirk. At this point, Deku would be extremely smart and have everything he could ever want. Deku would basically look at All Might, and at the last day that they would train, All Might would tell him that if he wants, that they could spar to compare where they're at. Now, as soon as the match starts, Deku would speed blitz All Might right in front of his face before All Might could even react, and go to punch him, but he would stop short of punching him. And this is when he would create a huge tidal wave, a tsunami actually, and it would be rushing towards the next nearby town. This is when Deku would be like, oh crap. He would say, Kozmo, Wanda, I need your help. This is when Kozmo and Wanda would appear, and he would say, I wish this tsunami would stop. And Kozmo and Wanda would basically immediately stop it. After this, Deku would be like, whew, I'm a little too strong for this world. And All Might would look at him and say, I'll say, you're way too powerful. This is when Deku would basically smile at All Might and tell him that he's grateful for all he's done for him, and that he's going to be going off to take the exam now. As soon as Deku would walk in, he would begin to walk, and as he's walking, he would see that a girl would be actually falling. As soon as she's falling, this girl would be known as Uraraka, and Deku would catch her with Black Whip. He would say, hey, sorry I caught you with my quirk, but I figured you didn't want to fall. This is when she would look at him and say, oh, thank you. And they would proceed to talk for a little bit. Deku would tell her that his name is Izuku Midori, and she would tell him that Her name is Ochako Uraraka, and he would begin to tell her that he wishes her luck and that he hopes to see her soon in the class. This is when Deku would basically walk in, and he would get a perfect score on the test. Ida wouldn't call him out since Deku would be a little smart enough then to sit there and mutter for no reason. Now, this is when Deku would basically go to the gate, and when he gets to the gates, he sees that Uraraka's there looking a little nervous. Now, once he sees Uraraka, he would basically begin to walk up to her, but when he does that, Ida walks straight up to him and tells him, "Hey, don't distract her." This is when Deku would look at him and say, "Hey, I'm not distracting her, man. I'm just gonna go up to her and trying to talk to her. Like, I just want to see, like, what's up, because she looks a little worried." So when Ida would be like, "Oh, well, still, just don't distract her." And Deku would say, "I'm telling you, man, I'm not distracting her. Leave me alone." This is when Ida would begin to hold Deku's shoulder and say, "Leave her alone. I'm telling you, she's trying to concentrate." And Deku would get angry and would basically blitz behind Ida and tell him, "Why don't you leave me alone?" And right as he does that, the gate would open. Now, as soon as the gate opens, Deku would speed blitz and demolish every single robot in there. As soon as he does that, he would step out, and this is when everybody would barely be at the gate. They'd be like, "What the?" And Deku would have demolished everything from every section. He would have destroyed everything in a matter of seconds. And this is when it would be announced that Deku has destroyed every single robot available and that they're going to have to wait for next week. This is when All Might would be in the studio watching him, and he'd be like, "God, this kid is too strong." Aizawa would see this and be like, "We need to make this guy a hero, because if he is not, we are all fucked." This is when Deku would basically be like, "Sorry guys, I didn't mean to go all out like that." And everybody would be like, "What?" They'd be like, "He's the next #1 hero. He's the next symbol of peace." And some would begin to say, "He's even stronger than All Might." They would all be like, "Look at what he did." The 0-pointer would be on the ground, and Deku would be getting praise from all over. This is when Deku would basically go back home, and basically a week later would get the letter telling him that he had basically gotten the greatest score of all time, and that if he's lucky, nobody will ever break his score. This is when Deku would actually begin to talk to Kozmo and Wanda and say, "Did you guys hear that? I got the greatest score ever." This is when Kozmo and Wanda would look at themselves and say, "Yeah, Zuko, I mean, obviously, look at the quirk you have. You went in there and just destroyed everything. For you, it looked like things were moving in slow motion, but for everybody else, things happened in a matter of an instant. It was as if they blinked and you destroyed everything." This one Deku would say, "Am I really that strong?" They'd say, "I mean, yeah, you have All Might's power times infinity." No, wait, not times infinity, but you have All Might's power times 10. And Deku would say, "Oh yeah, I remember asking for that. Can I take that down a notch?" And they'd say, "Sure, Izuku." They would basically lower him down to Prime All Might with the other quirks, but it would be like a ×2 boost, since all the other quirks would add a little bit more, plus All Might would have to get doubled, since it's what's it called? I think it's called a build quirk. No, it's an enhancement quirk. So yeah, he enhances everything, and this is when Deku would actually basically appear in 1A about a week later. Everybody else would have had a different test done for them. The normal people, as in canon, would have actually passed. Now Deku would actually pull up to UA, and he would meet Uraraka. Once he sees Uraraka, he would begin to walk with her into the school, and he would basically begin to tell her that yeah, he's pretty powerful. This is when she would tell him that he could become the #1 hero as it is now. And Deku would say, "Yeah, but I just want to go through this." And Uraraka would say, "Wow, if I was you, I mean, I would just take out every villain now." This is when Deku would think about it and be like, and Uraraka would be like, "What is it?" And Deku would begin to be like, "Can you give me a second?" This is when Deku would proceed to go to the bathroom and be like, "Kozmo, Wanda, can I ask you guys something?" They'd be like, "Sure thing, Izuku." And he'd be like, "Can I wish all villains to go away?" And they would begin to tell him that he can, and Deku would be like, "What? Are you serious?" Not gonna lie to you guys, boys, it got a little bit noisy since my family decided to budge into my room, so I had to stop the recording for a little bit. But where were we at? Izuku had just realized that this whole time he could have just wished villains away. And Deku would begin to say, "What? I could have just wished villains away. You would have told me that earlier. Imagine all the things I could have stopped." This one, Cosmo and Wanda would look at each other and say, "Well, we don't know what to tell you, Izuku." And Izuku would say, "I wish I was a kid again and I first met you guys. And I kept all of my memories." And this is when Deku would be turned back into his kid self. This is when Izuku would look at Cosmo and Wanda and say, "Hey guys." And they would say, hey Zuko, we're your god." And Izuku would begin to look at them and say, "Yeah, I know, I've been through this again. I wish for you guys to take me back to this day." And they'd say, "So, how did things go with the previous us?" And he's like, "No time to explain." He would begin to say, "I wish all villains never existed." And this is when he would realize that he made a bad choice, because later on in his life, without any villains, there wouldn't be any heroes. So this is when Deku would be like, I might have made a mistake. He would proceed to go back again and say, "Hey Cosmo, Wanda, I wish that all villains turned good and that there was world peace." And Cosmo and Wanda would look at each other, wave their wands, and say, "Done." Zuko would then say, "I wish I had All Might's powers, mastery, and intelligence. And I wish I kept it forever." So when Cosmo and Wanda would look at each other and say, "You got it, Timmy." And, Timmy, you got it, Deku. And Deku would proceed to look at them and say, "Thank you guys for everything you've done. You guys don't know how much you guys have changed my life." So when Cosmo and Wanda would actually begin to look at each other and say, "Well, yeah, Izuku, it was really fun being with you, but we actually have to go. It seems you're already happy and you have anything any kid could ever want. We need to go help some other children who are not as fortunate as you and, need to be godparents to them." So when Izuku would actually have a little teardrop go down his face and say, "I'm really going to miss you guys." He would say, "We're really going to miss you too, Timmy." And Cosmo would begin to say, "Oh, Timmy." Oh wait, no, it's not Timmy, it's Izuku. I'm going to miss you, man. And Izuku would say, "I'm going to miss you guys too." And this is when Cosmo and Wanda would disappear. Now, as for everything else that happens in canon, there would be no need for Izuku to become a hero. There'd be world peace, all villains would have turned good, and there'd be no other problems to solve. So that being said, this is going to actually mark the conclusion to what if Deku had Cosmo and Wanda. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, make sure to share it around. And yeah, with that being said, you guys know what I'm about to say. Zether out.